Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Councillor Dawes, the meeting started. Meeting started. Can we come to order, please? It's like the Wheel Tappers and Shunters Club in here. Right, for those old enough to remember. Good evening, I'm Councillor Maureen Cleater, the Chair of the Housing and Community Cohesion Policy Advisory Committee, and I'm pleased to welcome you to this meeting. The meeting will be broadcast live and recorded for playback on the Council's YouTube channel. Will anyone else be recording the proceedings? I ask so that people at the meeting will know if this will be happening. No, okay, thank you. If the fire alarm sounds during the meeting, please remain seated and members of the Democratic Services team will assess the situation and give further instructions on the evacuation of the building if necessary. So, on to the agenda. Item 1. Are there any apologies? As Chair, I've received apologies from Councillor Rodwell. Any other apologies? No. Okay, thank you. And any substitute members? I know that Councillor Rodwell was having difficulty contacting someone, so I take that as a no. Item 3, urgent items. There are no urgent items this evening. And I see no visiting members. Item 5, disclosures by members and officers. Are there any disclosures by members or officers? Thank you. We're on a roll here. Keep it going. Item 6, disclosures of lobbying. Are there any disclosures of lobbying? No. Sorry whoever I deafened on our YouTube channel then when I hit the mic with my paper. Apologies. Item 7 is to consider whether any should be taken in private because of possible disclosure of information. I move that all items be taken in public. However, if members wish to discuss the information contained within either the exempt appendices to item 12, property acquisition, or item 14, exempt minutes of the meeting held on the 8th of July 2025, it will be necessary to move into closed session due to the likely disclosure of exempt information for the reasons specified on the papers and having applied the public interest test. Is that agreed? Thank you. Item 8, minutes of the meeting held on the 8th of July, pages 1 to 6. Are there any comments on the accuracy of the minutes? Councillor Dawes. Okay. If there are none, I move that the minutes of the meeting held on the 8th of July 2025, including the exempt minutes, be approved as a correct record and signed. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Item 9, the forward plan relating to the committee's terms of reference on pages 7 to 11. Are there any comments on the forward plan, or do Cabinet members wish to make any comments? Councillor Dawes.
Thank you, Chair. I only learned from reading through the agenda that Katie Cox, Cabinet member, have actually left the Cabinet. I was quite shocked to hear that news and deplore her leaving because she was such a great member of the Cabinet, and it's sad to see her leaving. Yeah, she left the council.
Thank you very much. I mean, we did all get an email. We got an email and it was in the press, but I absolutely agree. Cathy is a great loss to the council. She was a great public servant. So thank you for raising that, Councillor Dawes. So, Cabinet member, any comments on the forward plan, or can we move to note the forward plan? Any comments, Simon? No. Okay. Yeah, I move that the forward plan be noted. Is that agreed? Thank you. Now, the item you've all been waiting for, because I know you all love finance. Right, item 10, the first quarter finance update. It is on pages 12 to 23, and the two recommendations are on page 13, and that will be introduced by Adrian Lovegrove, Head of Finance. Over to you, Adrian.
Thank you, Chair, for the great introduction. I shall now do my best to disappoint people about the finance. So, as normal, policy advisory committees get updates on the budgets for their area, and obviously this is the first quarter for 25-26. The position for this particular pack is currently a overspend of around £429,000. I'll go through some of the details of that in a moment. But overall, for Maidstone, we are slightly under by around £26,000, which is a good position. So it's obviously within 0.1% of the overall budget. So good news overall. Obviously, still as we're trying to deal with some of those overs and unders through where we're going through the rest of the organisation. The two sort of key variants, certainly the biggest one relates to homelessness. So we continue to still to have high volumes of homelessness, and part of that is also potentially slightly longer in terms of people staying in through the TA process. So that's sadly causing some additional costs. There's obviously some additional work being done on prevention. That's trying obviously to reduce that sort of load of, I say load, a bad word, but the number of people coming through and trying to deal with them sooner, instead of people turning up on Friday, we have little chance of dealing with prevention. So they're still looking at as much as they can to do around that. And the other smaller variance relates to Granada House. We've changed that from private rented sector, and we're going to use that for TA. Obviously, overall benefit, but obviously there is some loss of income around that. Capital. Looking to, at this stage, spend about 29 million. So that's a slightly under the projected budget. Some of that is slippage in some of the schemes, a couple of small ones, and there's a couple that, as we know, the budget is set so well in advance. So there are a couple of schemes that we thought we might be able to be interested in, but they've not come to fruition either because the site isn't suitable or it's just not financially viable. But otherwise, looking reasonably good with certainly some of the main schemes like Maidstone East still progressing and so forth. So that's sort of key position. Happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Adrian. Councillor Carford, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just wanted to ask, I mean, obviously, it does seem that this overspend on temporary accommodation is almost a permanent thing. I mean, I know from when I was sitting in Simon's chair, it was a problem then. And it's a problem now. And I just wondered, are we just having to accept that that is something we are going to permanently have to deal with, a bit like the deficit that the government has? It's something that's just there and it just rolls on. Or do you think that the things can be done, or what we're doing, do we think we're going to gradually backpedal on that, or is it something that is just running to stand still, if that makes sense? That was one question. And then the other question I just had, Granada House, now forgive me, I thought Granada House had to be, didn't we get funding from that from KCC for Ukrainians and I think it was Afghans, and I just wondered how that's now come back into that we can use it for temporary accommodation, or are we having to still use it for Ukrainians and Afghans? Thank you.
I can certainly answer the first bit. Yes, it is a feature of modern life, I'm afraid, that the temporary accommodation numbers are totally uncontrollable. The steps that we are taking in terms of building more affordable homes and buying more properties, renting more. We now have the private leasing scheme that we've got underway, which will again provide more homes for local people. Trouble is, it's a bit like trying to fill the bath with the plug out. The more you do, it is, because you can't regulate what goes in. All you can do is just as much as you can with the resources you've got, and we are building as much and developing as much and buying as much as the budgets will allow. As to Granada House, yes, I think that was a grant from KCC, but it was time limited, wasn't it? So after a certain length of time, the properties would come back to us to use. So it was quite beneficial in that we could use KCC money, and then after a certain period, we could use it for our own temporary accommodation.
Just quickly on the, obviously the budget pressure, we've got the budget process, we're just about to start for next year already. And as part of that, we will consider whether we need to adjust the budgets again to reflect that. So it doesn't necessarily reduce the cost, but hopefully we'll think about, as Simon has mentioned, in terms of building the properties and buying our own. Hopefully that will reduce some of the cost, but also we'll just reflect that hopefully in the budget. So hopefully we can get closer to a balanced position.
Are there any other questions? Councillor Kafka.
Thank you, Chair. It's more like just a couple of administrative checker. Page number 19, is that B2? Is that meant to be a Housing and Community Cohesion Policy Advisory Committee? That's meant to be HCC rather than PHSC? Is that just typing error, I believe? Sorry, obviously, thanks, Councillor Parby, obviously you picked up on the housing and community cohesion on the work we spend on the that I was going to ask, but that's more clarification. But on the page number 21, the A3.1, where do you say the last line? Is it the policy advisory committees on the quarterly basis throughout? Is that 25, 26 or 24, 25? Is that meant to be 25, 26? Yeah. Thank you. Finally, this is a very much ignorant questions. On the page number, it's on the B1, the capital budget. If the forecast was 33.2 million and we spend, sorry, the project was 29.3 million, is that 3.9? Is that saving or is that underspent? Sorry, just a bit ignorant questions.
So that's underspend or slippage, because some of it isn't physically, it's not, because so sort of a certain project like, I say, Maidstone East, if that's slipped by a month, that will obviously push the costs into future years. So what we tend to do through the capital programme when we set it next year, we'll reflect that any slippage due to any planning permission or anything else that may impact any of those costs. So it's not an underspend as such. Yeah.
And just a quick comment from me. The policy we have of purchasing properties ourselves and bring them in, as well as reducing the cost of temporary accommodation, they also become an asset that we hold for the council, which some authorities are a bit asset and cash poor, whereas we seem to be getting that balance right, which I think is correct actually, because, you know, giving hotel chains millions of pounds for temporary, A, it's not conducive and correct for the people who have to live in there, especially those with children, and B, I think it's the right decision for the council to actually try and manage that properly, so that at least if people are in temporary accommodation, they're in a home, you know, and I think that's really important.
And just a small point on that, Chair, is if temporary accommodation numbers ever did go down, then we could obviously use those for social and affordable rent as well. So as you say, in terms of an asset, it's quite usable for making sure we support Maidstone residents.
It's a win-win. However, I've seen in the press that a certain person who shall remain nameless, because I don't think he's worthy of the name, is trying to offload all his private rented accommodation. He stood as police, well, he tried to stand as police and crime commissioner, but then realised he couldn't because he had a criminal conviction. However, I've said no names. However, my understanding is those properties are in a pretty parlous condition, and would need a significant amount of work. It's not just in this area, it's also in Ashford and elsewhere that that person is trying to offload their accommodation. And those who saw the closure of the A26 when half of one of those properties landed in the road would know that that probably isn't, they're probably, how can I put it, overvalued based on the conditions that they are. And I wouldn't want to put any of our people in accommodation in such a state. Councillor Dawes.
Thank you, Chair. Most of my questions been answered, but I noticed on page 22 there's a small typos in the line saying temporary accommodation. Right at the end, on the last column of forecast year, it says 66, where it should read 6.6 million rather than 66 million, probably.
It is correct. So if you take the estimate is 12 million, we plan to spend 11.934. So then that should leave all of £66,000 left. So that, yeah, so it's good news in the sense of Philip is doing well to deliver all of those purchases.
I see no one else indicating they want to speak. So as per the recommendations on look at the two recommendations on page 13, is that the revenue position at the end of quarter one, including the actions being taken or proposed to improve the position where significant have been identified, be noted, and that the capital position at the end of quarter one for this year be noted. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. And thank you, Adrian, for making finance debate nice and interesting, which is more than I did at a Unison conference one year. Item 11 is the annual performance report. It'll be introduced by Councillor Wales, the Cabinet Member for Housing and Homelessness. Oh, Anna, are you going to do it? Well delegated, Councillor Wales. I love that, pointing that way. Yeah. Over to you, Anna.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members. This report sets out the performance position of our 24-25 key performance indicators, KPIs, and it sets out those that are within the remit of this committee. Members are reminded that as this is the period 2024 to 25, this was under the previous strategic plan, therefore the KPIs have been aligned to those priorities. Our current KPIs are aligned to the new corporate strategy and those priorities, but we have tried to show where the alignment is within the document. To see the current set of KPIs and performance, please go to our very handy performance dashboard on our website, and if anyone doesn't remember where that is, let me know and I will email you a link tomorrow. So overall, as a brief summary, there are 22 KPIs that fall within the remit of this committee, and of them, 12 were not targeted and were provided for information only at the time. Of the remaining 10, those with a target, 60% met the target that was assigned to them. 10% missed the target by less than 10% and 30% missed the target by more than 10%, so would be red indicators. Strong performance has been seen within the housing options service, with the number of households prevented or relieved from becoming homeless, and the number of private sector homes improved through the housing standards team interventions was also above target. You were recommended to note the performance position, as these are the indicators for last year. There may have been some improvement in the intervening time, but I'm happy to take any questions, and where I can't answer them, I will find an answer and email the rest of the committee within the week. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anna. Councillor Parfitt.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you for this report. It's actually very glossy and shiny, and it looks and reads really well. I just have a few questions and perhaps observations. Community protection, that is obviously performing really well, and that department is obviously doing a really good job. I just wondered though, for example, we've got our community notices and our community warnings, and they are on the increase. And I think that's a bit of a double-edged sword. It means we've got more problems, but we are dealing with it. And I just wondered how we are monitoring the success of those notices, because obviously we can issue a community protection notice or warning. We can do that, but then is that actually solving the problem? And I just wondered how we monitored the success of those. And then my next point was regarding, this was more the housing and health, and I just thought it was quite strange that we're seeing those in temporary accommodation rising, yet houses in financial crisis or at risk of financial crisis was decreasing. And you would almost expect those things to be concurrent or running in alignment. And I just found a little bit confusing. And then obviously we've got the KPIs for the homes being delivered, and you know, I do appreciate there is a national picture to consider here, and so yes, it is a problem, and perhaps whether we're doing the best job, I'm not sure. I know there is a national picture, but what I'm wondering is, are we expecting this trend of not delivering on our affordable housing to continue, or is it something that we're expecting to pick up? And then just finally, and this is just me being nitpicky, on page 41, it says that we're the fourth highest number of households in temporary accommodation, but on the graph it looks like we're third. Thank you.
I'll make the amendment to the last one. I'll might need to come back to you on the first, and I can answer the second, and then I'll pass over to Councillor Wales. So I don't feel confident enough to speak on the community protection team. That's not my area of work, and I don't have Martin Jeans or Councillor Nagy here this evening. So if it's okay with you, I'll take that question away and speak to them, and then email the committee, or get Martin to, I think, be the most appropriate thing. With regards to the tracker and households in temporary accommodation, I can see the reasoning there. You would expect there to be some kind of alignment. I think the tracker only monitors a certain subset of people, and that's where we have the data on them in relation to benefits. If you fell outside of that, so if you had a mortgage, or you were trying to, you were working but not claiming any benefits, then you wouldn't be picked up in that cohort of people. Equally, we know from the work that's being undertaken in the One View team within housing, that there's a range of reasons, including health and domestic abuse, particularly domestic abuse, where we're seeing a rise of people becoming homeless. So they may not feature in this cohort here, but they may have sufficient means, but their home is unsafe for them. So I think there's, with the temporary accommodation, there's too many factors to be able to align them together. What I can say is that in the work that the One View team are doing in terms of picking up people at early stage in terms of prevention, where they can, they're filtering the work through to the welfare officer, so that she can engage with those people at an earlier stage, so then hopefully their situation is improved on the tracker. Equally, where she's picking up people that she feels may be at the risk of losing their accommodation, she's filtering them through to the housing team. So there is actually a lot of cross work that's happening between them, which would also affect the figures on either side.
That makes sense.
But yes, not an exact science, but there is an interrelation there. If I hand over to Councillor Wales.
On the housing side of things, on the provision of new affordable homes, what we're seeing here in this particular year is almost exclusively homes provided by non-council builders, so it's the big companies, and as you said, they are suffering sort of national issues and problems. What we will start to see in the next year or two is a number of the council-led projects delivering homes. If you've been up Tunbridge Road, you've got the old Bath store site on one side and Corbyn's Yard or Corbyn's Place on the other side of the road. They will be probably inhabited during this year, and that's another 30 or 40. So that's about half of the whole target, the whole figure for last year, just in those two properties. When we get as far as Maidstone House and it's 180, Springfield and it's 103, then that really will bump up the numbers. It's just, well, as you all know, it's just such an incredibly long lead-in time. We've had the tenders back for Maidstone East, but that will then take about another year before that gets started to be built, and then 2 or 3 years before they actually appear on site. So they are being done and being moved, and things that we had picked up from the local plan, they are being moved along as fast as we can. It just takes an inordinate length of time. The other issue with Springfield is, of course, that they're taller buildings, so the safety regulations and things involve an awful lot more than they used to, and that's about another year in the whole process, waiting for them to get certified and the plans to be agreed on that, because there's such a backlog of properties that have to go through the one agency to be approved. So, yes, if we get more sites being developed, most builders actually are quite good in delivering the 40% of the quota. We're not spending too much time sort of chasing them to make sure we get the 40% affordable on a new development. They're actually quite good round here, in my experience in the past. They will try all sorts of means to wriggle out of providing the affordable homes, but we're actually having quite a lot of success in making sure that they do. But again, it's getting the applications to go through planning committee and then to get them on the ground. I mean, Parsonage Place just in autumn, that's still delivering homes, but again, there'll be a whole chunk of those coming on stream this next year, and that's all new build, again with at least 40% affordable homes in it.
Thank you, Councillor. Just to answer your question briefly on CPWs, I actually had our ward cluster meeting today with the police. So we've got crime and disorder in October. So probably, I know I've got some questions to ask there. So it might be useful. I know when Martin spoke with the police, as it pertains to Parkwood, Shetway, and that there's a specific reason why they're using CPWs that have actually been quite effective. And also it means there needs to be, if people are in social housing, there needs to be joint working with the housing associations around tenancy agreements and where their people are in breach of that. So encouraging, if you like, as well as signposting, encouraging people and parents to take responsibility for their children, but also signposting for support where they need it. So I would suggest the crime and disorder elements of overview and scrutiny is next month. So that'd be a pretty good place where we can actually have the questions asked and have the most up-to-date data. And in preparation for Halloween, which if you live in Parkwood, Mangravitt and Shetway, is always a delight. Councillor Dawes, you had a question.
Brilliant. I'll start with a great comment. I really like the report, and I thoroughly like the page 35. I think it's very well designed, and I think it can be engaging to any of our residents to read through and see how Maidstone's been doing. So that's brilliant. Next, on page 37, I know we've done the KPI on crime protections. On page 39, the Health and Inclusion Partnership, there's a low-income financial tracker helping Maidstone Borough Council discover a number of households that are in crisis. We talked with Councillor Parfitt, but So this tracker is only tracking people that are either living in social housing or are in receipt of benefits. So any household that is currently in private household and are self-employed or on low income that are in crisis would not be picked up by the tracker. Is that correct?
Yeah, unless they're on housing. I think benefits the key point there rather than the type of tenure of accommodation. It's whether they are on a form of benefit. That's where this data comes from for this. I think that's the important point, not the tenure.
Or if they reach out to you to say that they're at risk.
They wouldn't be included on this tracker, no. So this, the Low Income Financial Tracker is a dashboard developed by an organisation called Policy and Practice. They've pulled data sets together and that allows us to see an in real time, to a certain degree, position of where people are in crisis, so where their income doesn't meet their outgoings, or where they're at risk, or whether they are just coping or just managing, essentially. So it kind of, and it allows our welfare officer to review that data and proactively reach out. We specifically target those in crisis first and then move up the chain. To reach out and offer support information when we have it, when we have the household support fund. We might be proactive in terms of grants or offers where we have that available. So it's developed by an organisation external to the council, which we can use. Currently, it's funded for I'd say, I'm just going to ballpark, about another 6 months. We'd have to find additional funding if we wanted to pay for it again. So it's just been a proactive way that we've been able to target a very specific subset of people that are struggling. Yes, if you're not within that claiming benefits, it's very difficult for us to then access data to find these people, because we've got to be able to have a way of proactively reaching out to them unless they contact us, as you say, Councillor Parfitt.
So just from the chair, Anna, obviously a lot of people are signposted for debt help to either Christians Against Poverty, CAB, doesn't matter where you are in the borough. Staples Debt Centre is another one. Do we work with any of those? I understand, because when we're doing datas and KPIs, we need to have a structure. But I think I'm just concerned, as other councillors are, that we're missing the working poor, and they fall beneath, and they have to go to absolute rock bottom and in crisis. Whereas if we're trying to do preventative stuff,
Yeah, this, you're quite right. We can't, there's no way of, that's not structured data, so it's very difficult to show it in a KPI in a meaningful way. That doesn't mean that we're not working proactively with a number of different groups. We have really good referral arrangements with numbers of different organisations, and we proactively work and have arrangements or other projects with the Citizens Advice Bureau around debt, which we offer in Trinity, for example. So yeah, this is one way that we have of proactively receiving information and being able to record numbers, which helps inform our understanding of an issue. We recognise it's only one part of the issue. We're proactive in the way that we try to engage another group of people, but we just don't have it in this kind of helpfully recorded way that we have with the tracker.
that's useful. And I suppose my only other comment would be, and I'm not asking you to do anything, is that actually we also should track as an employer whether we have employees in crisis as well. That's not for this committee, but I think it's just something in the round. We're all very passionate, no matter what party we belong to, about trying to get this as right as we can do it with the resources we have available. So if we could just be mindful of that.
Just on that note, we have tried to proactively make arrangements make information available for our staff as well, and to let them know that when we do have, for example, voucher schemes available through the information through the welfare officer, that staff are, if they live in the borough, are entitled to that as well. Obviously that can be quite difficult for some people because they want to keep information private, but we have offered that, and I know we have supported in the past informally.
Yeah, and just to say, because there are various trade unions that are recognised, I know, for example, my own trade union does grants for uniforms, does grants at winter, has debt advice. So if you're in a trade union as well, always look to get advice from them, because they do, you know, debt help as well. I think that's important for everyone to know. There are resources out there. Councillor Dawes.
Yesterday I had a lovely conversation with Anna, with part of my question, and I was talking about potentially making a Facebook page, trying to engage with some of my residents and say, actually, if you're not in receipt of benefits and you're struggling, here's some places where you could go and get some help. And Anna said, well, actually, engage with the welfare officers, because they will have a way of wording this kind of post to trying to reach out and make sure people get the help that they need. So that was helpful. I've got one last question, and it was, we're back on the affordable housing. So it says there that you had a quota of 160 houses as a target. Is that target is for a year or not? And we only fulfilled 75%, so we're left with 85% missing, so we're basically halfway. So do we think that it's something that is going to be a bit like homelessness, a little bit recurrent because of the market of properties, that we are waiting for things to come alive, or at some point we think we're going to manage to catch up on those targets?
Well, the figure in there is the target for the year. The 160 is for the year just closed. By the interventions that I outlined, and also one that I forgot, which is Golding Homes' big redevelopment of Cambridge Crescent, which will generate an extra 100 properties, near more or less, which are all additional homes, and that will be within this financial year as well. So we will catch up quite well with the target. I don't know what the target is for this year, but we are reaping some of the results of the activities that we've had in the past year.
I drove past Cambridge Crescent today, and the houses, windows are in, solar panels are in, looking really good. And if anyone's listening, out of our millions of viewers, can we look at turn to us, because they're really good if you're unsure what you do. Councillor Cadker, then Councillor Burke.
Thank you, Chair. Page number 34, SIPA. Am I right to think that's the Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy rather than Chartered Inside? Yeah, that's Chartered Institute.
Sorry, I'm just trying to get to the page. Bear with me one moment.
So did you say page 34?
34, yeah.
34.
That's it reads Chartered Inside. I believe that should be Chartered Institute. Am I right?
Yes, sorry, yeah, sorry, I couldn't see it on there. Yes, Chartered Institute.
And
yeah.
also, page number 39, on the graph heading, it should be the low-income financial tracker. There's a typo there as well. Page number 39.
Oh, yeah, there's a small spelling error, yeah.
Then, moving on to page number 43. First of all, when you talk about the electrical safety on the left-hand side, last paragraph, it says, due to not being able to access one property. What happened to that property? Because from the statutory inspection point of view, I would say that's quite vital to say what happened to that property. Thank you.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't have that level of information. I'd need to ask the team to answer that. It's not obviously my area of work.
I think it's like most things with the safety checks, you just keep going back and going back until they let you in. And sometimes it's short notice, and sometimes, you know, they've got hospital appointments. But my understanding is that we represent and represent until those checks are done. That's standard operating procedure with anyone who's got accommodation. Yeah.
Sorry, the next question on the 43. Further down, we said that the team have made significant effort. That paragraph, I'm really struggling to convince myself because it reads very much improvement, but further down on the paragraph, in the last 4 quarters, we only achieved the target 90% in a 1 quarter. So no way we'll be hitting the target. But reading that paragraph, it reads very well that we improved it, but it doesn't. Thank you.
So as I understand it, as I read it, it's the team have really endeavoured to try to improve a situation. Um, I I asked for some additional information on that area because I knew that there potentially were going to be some queries. As I understand it, that there was a problem in receiving some of the data, and we were having to work with a contractor to try and get the data. So perhaps we can provide a little bit more context if we've got room in there to explain the fact that the team have been having to work with a third party, and that's what's been, so they have really endeavoured to, but as a result of some issues, they haven't been able to achieve target. So rather than them saying they have improved, I think it's that they've worked really hard to try and improve what was a negative situation.
Thank you. Especially very last sentence, I'm very much struggling, where it said throughout the year ending 2024-25, it's comfortably within the target, but I don't think it's going to be within the target.
That's void properties as opposed to repairs. So it's no, it's just additionally the number of void properties and the percentage of rent arrears has reduced as opposed to repairs.
Which is what we would want, a reduction in voids, because we don't get money for them. Right, thank you very much, Councillor Kadka. Councillor Burke.
Thank you. You answered a bit of it, to be fair. I was just concerned on page 43 around the drop from 90 to 60. What I would find quite interesting, maybe not for here, but if it can be provided, for example, if in quarter 3 you had, let's say, for argument's sake, 1,000 issues raised and you hit 90%, fantastic. But in quarter 4, if you had 10,000 issues raised and you only hit 60, it doesn't make us look like we're on a downward trend through, I use the word incompetence in brackets, but I think it'd be useful if there was something around, actually, was there a massive increase in things being reported after Christmas, for argument's sake, as to why it dropped to 60%? Because if that gets shared in the public, it's just going to make us look a little bit like, well, 60%, you know, I've rented, and if you're waiting in excess of 21 days for a repair, it doesn't sit well.
Yeah, I'll get the team to provide some context, and also obviously bear in mind we are now in the next period, so they'll be also recording this data, so perhaps they can provide some additional information on how that performance is progressing now, knowing particularly that those difficult period with some of those issues with the contractor is over.
Yeah, quarter 4 base pipe times, usually, in properties, isn't it? Councillor Dawes.
Hiya. I noticed another questions on page, so that'll be 42. It's about that graph around the number of completed disabled facility grants. The 2021-2022 years and 24-25 are quite high, but there's a sudden dip in 2022 and 2023-24. Is there any particular reasons why we have completed less number of disability facility grant during those years?
So I can't speak for 2021-22, but I can speak for 24-25. We got additional grant from the government. So 2022-23, 23-24 would be representative standard years. Certainly in 24-25, we had additional grant, therefore we were able to do more.
I think also it depends on the referrals you've had for those sort of grants. If the OTs are behind at KCC and, you know, with the backlog that built up over COVID period, that could impact as well. We can only work on stuff that's been recommended and requested by professionals, is my understanding. Sorry, Councillor Wales, did you want to come in on that?
Just to corroborate that, I mean, the Disabled Facilities Grant is money which is passported through us from Kent. So when people apply, then we help to adapt their property to make it suitable for them to stay in. Things like motor neurone disease, which is one of the ones which concerned me very much at the beginning. We're in straight away adapting properties to make sure that people can carry on living comfortably for as long as possible, particularly with such an awful disease.
Thank you very much, Councillor Wales. Councillor Dawes, one more?
Yeah, one more. I was looking at the KPI on page 44, and I wondered if you had an answer to my question that I asked you yesterday about the S195 and the S189B, because that doesn't. I don't understand what they mean. They're a bit too short for me.
What I'll do is I've got some information from John Littlemore. I think he better explain it rather than me attempt to make a hash of it. Probably the explanation would be better coming from him, and I can send it to the whole of committee.
I was just going to say, can you get Mr. Littlemore to email it round to all of us? Because if we're struggling to understand, then the public will as well, and it's us they'll ask.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem.
Appreciate that, Anna. Councillor Parfitt.
Sorry to be a pain. Just because you mentioned, Councillor Wales, about motor neuron disease, because I know that was, again, when I was in your shoes, the motor neuron disease charity came to me and said one of the problems was these claims were not being dealt with quickly enough because the onset of the disease is so quick. Is that something that you're now able to expedite through so that people are not waiting?
Well, funny enough, I picked this up very early on in this portfolio. I had a friend, close friend, who died from it. So as soon as this came across my desk, I was straight onto it.
Yeah.
The issue was that a lack of knowledge, mostly with the OTs, in passing the information through to the right people at the right time. So we went back to them and just reinforced the process to make sure that we did get notified sooner rather than later from the OT.
Well done. I think that's very commendable. It's really good to hear.
Council of Wales, yeah, exactly. And a lot of the time it is about communication between authorities, between organisations. At the end of the day, we all go into this role to make things better for people. And I think, you know, congratulations that you've managed to, you know, move that on. Sorry for the loss of your friend, because that is a pretty awful, devastating disease that impacts on friends and families as well. Right, I see no more questions. So the recommendations are on page 25. I've seen no additional recommendations. So do we note recommendation 1 and 2? Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much, Anna, and thank you very much, Councillor Wales, because that was some pretty tough questioning there. Yes, a very positive note. Thank you. Philip and Rachel now are worrying we've saved the best till last for this. Right, so item 12 is to be introduced by Councillor Wales, Cabinet Member for Housing and Homelessness. We've got Philip Morris and Rachel Bennett, who are present as Head of New Business and Development and the Development Project Manager. We'll go on to the white papers first. Any questions on the white papers? That's what we'll take first after presentation. Well, there you go. So the only other is the appendices. I need to ask, do people have questions on the appendices, which we will go into closed session after Councillor Wales has done his presentation of the paper. Do you want to do your presentation, Councillor Wales?
Okay, well, my introduction's on white paper, so we're okay. So, this item relates to the redevelopment of a site already owned by Maidstone Borough Council and the acquisition of 2 neighbouring properties to deliver a block of flats with 26 homes. The site is within walking distance of the town centre shops and services, as well as public transport networks. The existing building owned by MBC is currently used for temporary accommodation and has been for over 10 years. It no longer meets requirements and requires significant investment. This redevelopment proposal is therefore being brought forward as a more viable option. The site does not currently have planning permission, and the council will make the planning application once approvals and due diligence have been confirmed and following design development. The purchase of the neighbouring 2 properties is subject to planning being achieved. Contracts with the neighbouring properties will be entered into prior to submission of the planning application, but based on the planning being achieved. The report covers the acquisition and redevelopment of a 26-flat block delivering 15 one-bed and 11 two-bed homes. The housing team has provided data suggesting the need for 1 and 2 bed units in the town centre, which this scheme will go some way towards providing. The scheme includes increases in planting proposed to the front of the site, which will much improve the street scene and approach into Maidstone town centre. The improvement allows a provisional scope of 17 car parking spaces, which is deemed an acceptable compromise by the local planning authority. Electric vehicle charging facilities and secure cycle storage will be incorporated into the development design. As always, Home England grant funding will be applied for post-acquisition to assist in the cost of delivering these units as affordable housing, and depending on the amount of money we get, whether we can make it social rent as well. This proposed acquisition and redevelopment provides Maidstone Borough Council with a good opportunity which will go some way to improve the accommodation provision in this area, which has already seen some redevelopment. The acquisition supports the affordable homes development strategy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wales. Before I go any further, Mr. Morris, Ms. Bennett, you got anything? No. Okay. So, in terms of questions, are there questions on the yellow papers? Yeah. Anyone else? Yeah. Okay. I move that the public be excluded from the meeting for the exempt appendices to item 12, property acquisition for 1,000 home programmes. Yeah, due to the likely disclosure of exempt information for the reasons specified, having applied the public interest test. Is that seconded? Is that agreed? Agreed. Right, so if anyone wants to take a quick comfort break while we do the technology, feel free to quickly pop the loo. or the two Councillor Wilkinsons usually. There's usually about 3 people watching, but I live in hope. And John Perry, yeah, it's fingers of one hand, but, you know, could be worse. It could be Sean from the Heritage Party getting ready to send a flutter of Freedom of Information Act requests again, because we've gone into secret session. Yeah. So thank you anyone who's watching, who's been very patient and waiting, and thank you very much councillors and officers for a very informative session. So the page 48 gives a number of recommendations for consideration and recommendation to the Cabinet. Do you need me to go through these one at a time, or are you happy to agree points 1 to 4 on page 48? Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much, and I believe that I now declare this meeting closed. Thank you very much, everyone, and have a safe journey home. Thank you.